The first thing Elias noticed was the silence. Not the absence of sound. There were footsteps, armor servos, the low hum of energy shields, but the absence of uncertainty. Every movement around him carried intent. Every figure standing in the vast ceremonial hall knew exactly where they belonged. Except him. Elias stood alone at the center of the polished obsidian floor, wrists bound not by chains but by protocol. 2 guards flanked him at a respectful distance, not restraining, not threatening, observing, measuring. He had been summoned, not arrested. That distinction mattered. He wasn't sure why, but his instincts, honed over 12 years of frontier logistics and evacuation command, told him that when power wanted you broken, it didn't bother with politeness. The hall rose around him like a cathedral built for war. Tall columns etched with angular glyphs stretched into shadow. Rows of armored figures stood in perfect formation, faces hidden behind matte black helms trimmed with gold. Not soldiers awaiting orders, witnesses. At the far end of the chamber, elevated above the rest, she stood. She did not sit on a throne. She didn't need to. Her presence anchored the room the way gravity anchored a planet. Tall, pale-haired, clad in dark composite armor that looked less ceremonial than functional. Gold lines traced across the black surface of her suit like controlled lightning, restraint, not decoration. Her arms were crossed, posture relaxed, but her eyes found him instantly. Cold, focused, unblinking. Elias had been briefed on the Aurelian matriarchs, on their command hierarchies, on their tendency to weaponize stillness. But briefings never prepared you for the moment power looked directly at you and decided you were worth noticing. A murmur rippled through the hall, subtle, restrained, then faded at a single, almost imperceptible gesture from her hand. Silence returned. She descended the steps slowly, deliberately. Each footfall echoed, not loud but final, as if the room itself acknowledged her authority. When she stopped a few paces from him, Elias realized something unsettling. She was studying him the way an engineer studied a system failure, not with curiosity, with precision. "You are not afraid," she said at last. Her voice was calm, low, unforced. Not a question, a statement. Elias swallowed. "I am," he answered honestly. "I just learned a long time ago that fear is useless unless it gives you information." A flicker, something almost like interest, passed through her eyes. "You were extracted from the collapse zone instead of evacuating with your unit," she continued. "You rerouted power to civilian shelters while orbital fire was still active. You disobeyed 3 direct retreat signals." "I followed priority protocols," Elias said. "Civilians were still trapped. And because of that," she said, circling him slowly, 14,000 survived." He said nothing. He had learned that numbers carried different weight depending on who spoke them. Coming from her, it sounded less like praise and more like a charge being read aloud. "You are human," she said. "You possess no rank within my dominion. No lineage, no formal authority." She stopped directly in front of him. "And yet," she continued softly, "my commanders altered their formations because of you. My population sectors stabilized because of you. And my court demanded to know why someone like you mattered." Her gaze sharpened. "I dislike unanswered questions." The guards behind him remained motionless, but Elias could feel the tension tighten. This wasn't a trial. Trials implied uncertainty. This was assessment. "I didn't do anything to matter," he said carefully. "I did my job." A pause, then unexpectedly she smiled. Not warmth, not kindness, recognition. "That," she said, "is precisely why you are here." She stepped back, turning slightly so the assembled ranks could see him clearly. "Among my people," she announced, voice carrying effortlessly through the chamber, "power is inherited, trained, and enforced. Control is law. Emotion is liability." Her eyes returned to Elias. And yet today, control failed to save them. A ripple of unease passed through the formation. "You acted without command," she continued, "without promise of reward, without assurance of survival. You chose responsibility over obedience." She faced him again, close enough now that he could see faint, geometric patterns beneath the pale surface of her skin. Marks of neural augmentation, he realized. A mind enhanced not for emotion but for dominance. "Do you understand," she asked quietly, "how dangerous that is?" Elias met her gaze. "Yes." "Good," she said, "because danger recognizes its own." She turned away, addressing the hall once more. "This human will not be detained." A murmur louder this time. "He will not be rewarded." Silence snapped back. "He will remain." Her head tilted, just enough for him to see one eye again. "Close to me." Elia's chest tightened. "With respect." She raised a hand. He stopped mid-sentence without realizing he had done so. "You were brought here," she said, voice softer now, more intimate, "because you disrupt systems simply by existing within them." Her gaze locked onto his. "I have no use for heroes." She stepped closer again, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "But I have great use for variables." The guards moved, not toward him but away. The hall remained silent, and Elias understood with a sudden chilling clarity that whatever he had just become, it was not a prisoner, and it was not free, not anymore. They did not escort him to a cell. That realization unsettled Elias more than restraints ever could have. Instead, he was led through corridors that felt intentionally disorienting, wide halls that narrowed without warning, lighting that shifted subtly from cool white to muted blue, walls etched with the same angular patterns he'd seen in the ceremonial chamber. The guards said nothing. They didn't need to. Their presence alone carried expectation. Keep moving, observe, adapt. Elias counted steps out of habit, measured turns, tried to build a mental map. It didn't work. The architecture resisted memorization. Paths curved just enough to break symmetry. Open spaces appeared where he expected dead ends. It was a place designed not for navigation, but for submission, to make visitors rely on guidance, to remind them constantly that orientation itself was a privilege. Finally, they stopped before a tall, seamless door. No markings, no handles. One of the guards stepped forward and placed a palm against the surface. The door parted soundlessly. "This is your assigned residence," the guard said. "Residence. Not holding, not containment." The door closed behind him before Elias could respond. The room was expansive. Too expansive for someone who was, by all definitions, a foreign civilian asset with no official standing. High ceilings. A wide viewport overlooking a tiered cityscape of steel and light, spires cutting through mist like blades. Subtle illumination traced the floor in thin gold lines, echoing the armor she wore. Her. The thought surfaced uninvited. The furnishings were minimal but precise, functional surfaces, a sleeping platform integrated into the wall, interfaces recessed until needed. No decorations, no indulgence. A space designed for someone who valued efficiency over comfort, someone who expected occupants to adapt. A soft chime sounded behind him. Elias turned. She stood just inside the doorway, alone this time. No guards, no audience. The armor was gone. In its place, she wore a form-fitting garment of deep charcoal fabric, layered and structured, still unmistakably authoritative but less overtly martial. The gold accents remained, always controlled, never excessive. Her pale hair was tied back now, exposing the sharp line of her jaw, the faint metallic tracery along her neck. "You assess environments before people," she said, observing him calmly. Elias exhaled slowly. "Habit." "A useful one," she replied, stepping inside. The door sealed behind her. "Sit." It was not a request. He did. She remained standing, arms folded, gaze steady. "You are wondering why you are not imprisoned," she continued. "Why you have not been interrogated. Why no demands have been made." "Yes," Elias admitted, "among other things." She nodded once. "Your kind associates power with domination. Ours associates it with control of outcomes." She activated a nearby interface with a brief gesture. Data bloomed into the air between them. Hollow projections of the evacuation zone, structural diagrams, casualty flows. His work. His decisions. his disobedience rendered into lines and probabilities. "You created order where chaos was accelerating," she said, "without permission." "I didn't have time to wait," Elias replied. "People were dying." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "That answer satisfies humans." She looked at him closely now. "It does not satisfy me." The projection shifted. A simulation rewound the event, this time branching. A version where he followed orders, where he evacuated with his unit. Casualty numbers climbed, sharp, merciless. "You see the divergence," she said. "One choice, vast consequence." Elias felt something tighten in his chest. "So why am I here?" She dismissed the projection with a flick of her fingers and finally sat opposite him. "Because," she said evenly, "I rule an empire built on obedience, and obedience has limits." Her gaze hardened not with anger but with something colder. "My people excel at following command, at executing strategy, at enforcing stability. But stability calcifies, it resists adaptation." She leaned forward slightly. "You did not ask whether you were permitted to act." "No," Elias said. "I asked whether it was necessary." Silence stretched between them. Then she smiled again, that same brief, unsettling curve of her lips. "Dangerous answer," she murmured. She rose and moved closer, stopping just beyond his reach. "My council believes you are a liability," she continued. "A foreign influence, an unpredictable element." She met his eyes. "I agree." His pulse quickened. "Then why keep me?" Her voice lowered. "Because unpredictable elements change trajectories." She studied him for a long moment, then spoke again, more quietly now. "You will remain within my proximity. You will observe. You will advise when asked. You will speak truth, even when it is inconvenient." "That sounds suspiciously like a role," Elias said. "It is," she replied, "an undefined one." He hesitated. "And if I refuse?" Her expression didn't change. "Then you will be returned to your people with diplomatic courtesy," she said. "And the next time a system collapses under rigid command, thousands will die who might have lived." The weight of that settled heavily. "You're leveraging guilt," Elias said softly. "I am leveraging reality," she corrected. "Guilt is your interpretation." She turned toward the viewport, looking out over the city. "You interest me, Elias Ward," she said. "Not because you are human, not because you defied orders." She glanced back at him. "But because you remind me that authority without conscience is merely control wearing a crown." Her gaze sharpened. "And conscience without power is useless." She straightened. "You will stay," she said, "for now." The door behind her opened soundlessly. "Rest," she added. "You will be summoned again." As she stepped out, she paused. "One more thing." Elias looked up. "Do not mistake proximity for safety," she said calmly. "You are close to me because I choose to watch you." Her eyes held his. "Do not give me reason to stop." The door closed. Elias remained seated long after she left, staring at the city beyond the glass. He had faced battlefields, collapsing stations, impossible evacuations. None of them had felt as precarious as this. Because for the first time, he wasn't reacting to danger. He was being evaluated by it. Elias learned quickly that proximity to power was not a privilege. It was exposure. The summons came without warning. No schedule. No pattern. Sometimes in the artificial dawn cycle, sometimes deep into the rest period when exhaustion dulled his reflexes. A guard would appear at the threshold of his quarters, silent, immovable, and Elias would follow without protest. He was led to council chambers, operations decks, reconstruction hubs, always near her, never beside her. He stood just close enough to observe how others reacted in her presence. They straightened unconsciously. Voices dropped. Movements became precise, restrained. Even seasoned commanders avoided meeting her gaze for too long. Authority radiated from her not through threat but inevitability. She noticed everything, and she noticed him noticing. "Speak," she said during one session, her voice cutting cleanly through a heated debate among sector governors. The room froze. Elias blinked. "Me." "Yes," she replied, eyes still on the holographic projections. "You have been silent for 6 minutes. That suggests either confusion or disagreement. Every head turned toward him. He felt the weight of it, alien officials, military leaders, technocrats, all watching a human outsider invited to comment where most wouldn't dare. "I disagree," he said carefully. A ripple of tension moved through the chamber. She turned to face him fully now. "Explain." "You're stabilizing infrastructure," he said. "Power grids, transport lanes, security corridors. That's necessary, but you're ignoring displacement." One of the governors scoffed. "Civilian relocation is being handled by moving people away from resources," Elias countered. "You're creating dependency instead of recovery. They'll survive, but they won't rebuild." Silence thickened. She studied him, unreadable. "Your alternative?" she asked. "Integrate relief operations with local leadership," Elias said. "Train them. Give them authority early. People recover faster when they feel ownership." The governor bristled. "That invites instability." "It invites responsibility," Elias replied evenly. "There's a difference." She raised a hand. The argument died instantly. "You speak as if control can be shared without consequence," she said. "I speak as someone who's seen what happens when it isn't," Elias answered. The air felt charged. Then unexpectedly she nodded. "Implement a limited trial," she said to the council. 2 sectors, monitor outcomes." The governors exchanged uneasy glances but did not protest. The session ended shortly after. Elias didn't realize his hands were trembling until he was alone again. That night, she came to his quarters herself. No guards. No announcement. "You challenged 3 senior governors today," she said calmly, stepping inside, "and contradicted me in open council." "I answered when asked," Elias said, honestly. She closed the door behind her. "That honesty will make you enemies," she said. "It already has," he replied. She regarded him for a long moment. "Why do you not soften your words?" she asked. "You could frame them more diplomatically." "Because people die when truth gets wrapped in comfort," Elias said. "And because you didn't bring me here to agree with you." A pause, then she laughed, not loudly, not mockingly, genuinely. It startled him more than her authority ever had. "You are correct," she admitted. "I did not." She moved closer, stopping just short of the personal distance line most species respected. "You unsettle my court," she continued. "They cannot categorize you. You do not seek favor. You do not posture for influence." Her gaze sharpened. "You do not fear displeasing me." "I fear consequences," Elias said, "just not the personal kind." Her expression shifted, something thoughtful, almost vulnerable, flickering beneath the controlled exterior. "That distinction," she said quietly, "is rare." She turned toward the viewport, looking out at the city lights. "When I was trained to rule," she said, "I was taught that hesitation was weakness, that empathy diluted command." She glanced back at him. "You make me question that." The admission hung in the air. "I'm not trying to change you," Elias said carefully. "I'm just telling you what I see." She nodded once. "Then continue," she said. "But understand this. If your perspective proves flawed, I will correct it without hesitation." "Fair," Elias said. "That's all anyone can ask." She studied him again, longer this time. "Do you know why I keep you close?" she asked. "Because I'm useful," he replied. "Yes," she said. "And because usefulness that refuses to be owned is instructive." Her eyes met his. "Rest," she said again as she had before. "Tomorrow we observe the results of your shared control." She paused at the door. "Elias," she added, "yes. For the first time since I assumed command," she said softly, "someone speaks to me without trying to control the outcome." Her gaze lingered. "That matters." When she left, Elias sat alone in the dim light of his quarters, heart pounding. This wasn't romance. It wasn't rescue. It was something far more dangerous. A crack forming in a system that had never expected to be questioned. And he was standing right at the fault line. The backlash came faster than Elias expected. 2 days after the trial sectors were implemented, data streams flooded the council channels. Efficiency metrics rose. Civilian compliance stabilized. Reconstruction timelines shortened. And resentment crystallized. Elias felt it before anyone said it aloud. The way conversations halted when he entered a room, the way certain commanders stopped acknowledging his presence entirely. Power tolerated disruption only when it could control it. He had disrupted direction. She summoned him that night, not to the council chamber, to the inner strategic sanctum. The room was smaller, enclosed by layered energy fields instead of walls. Tactical projections hovered in slow motion, fleet paths, population movements, risk corridors. This was where decisions were made before they were declared inevitable. She stood alone at the center. "You were correct," she said without preamble. "The trial sectors exceeded projections." Elias nodded. "Then why does it feel like I just walked into an ambush?" Her lips curved faintly. "Because success threatens established hierarchies," she replied, "and you are not protected by tradition." She gestured. A projection shifted, internal descent markers, political alignments. "They are moving against you," she continued. Subtly, quietly, the most dangerous way. Elias exhaled slowly. "So what happens now?" She stepped closer. "Now," she said, "I decide whether you are worth the instability you generate." The words were precise, honest, terrifying. "And if you decide I'm not," Elias asked. "Then I remove you from the equation," she replied calmly. "Safely. Permanently." He met her gaze. "By sending me away." "Yes." Something in his chest tightened, not fear, but something closer to disappointment. "And if you decide I am worth it." Her eyes held his. "Then I will openly associate your counsel with my authority." Elias absorbed that. That would paint a target on both of us. "Yes," she said, "and it would end any illusion that you are merely an observer." Silence stretched. "This is the part where I'm supposed to ask what you want," Elias said quietly. She regarded him with open intensity. "I do not want," she said. "I calculate." "Then calculate this," he replied. "If you send me away now, your system snaps back into shape. It stabilizes. It stagnates. The descent quiets, but the fault remains." She watched him carefully. "If you keep me," he continued, "you lose comfort, you gain friction. You gain voices you can't fully control. A beat and you gain adaptability," Elias finished. "The kind that survives long-term." Her gaze didn't waver. "You speak as though you are already committed to staying," she said. "I am," Elias answered without hesitation, "but not because of you." That caught her attention. "I stay because this matters," he continued, "because people are alive who wouldn't be otherwise, because walking away now would be choosing safety over responsibility." She studied him, truly studied him for a long moment. "You are dangerous," she said quietly. "Yes," Elias agreed. "So are you." The words landed between them like a blade laid flat on a table, not a threat but an acknowledgement. She turned away, pacing slowly. "My court believes influence must be controlled," she said. "They believe attachment weakens command." She stopped. "And yet," she added, voice lower now, "every significant shift in history begins with attachment to an idea, a principle, or a person." She faced him again. "If I keep you," she said, "you will not be shielded. Not from criticism, not from political consequence, not from my enemies." "I don't need shielding," Elias said. "I need clarity." Her eyes softened, just a fraction. "You will stand beside me at the next assembly," she said. "Not behind, not apart." Elias' breath caught. "That will change how they see me." "Yes," she replied, "and how they see me." She stepped closer, close enough now that he could feel the faint hum of the augmentation fields beneath her skin. "This is not protection," she said quietly. "This is alignment." Elias nodded once, then were clear. She held his gaze. "Understand this," she said. "Once I do this, there will be no pretense that you are neutral." "I stopped being neutral the moment you brought me here," he replied. Something passed through her expression then, relief perhaps, or resolve. "Rest," she said, though neither of them seemed inclined to. "Tomorrow we end the ambiguity." As he turned to leave, she spoke again. "Elias." He paused. "You have not asked my name," she said. He turned back, surprised. "You never offered it." A faint smile touched her lips. Tomorrow, she said, when you stand beside me, I will. The doors sealed behind him. Elias walked back to his quarters with a strange calm settling over him. This was no longer about survival. It was about choice. And tomorrow, he would stop being a variable in her system and become a visible fracture in it. The assembly chamber was alive long before Elias entered it. He could feel it in the air, an undercurrent of restrained tension, voices kept deliberately low, movements measured. Hundreds of officials, commanders, and delegates filled the tiered hall, each one aware that something was about to shift. Systems always sensed disruption before they understood it. Elias stood at the threshold, unannounced. The guards flanking the entrance hesitated, then stepped aside. Every conversation stopped. He walked forward alone, boots echoing against the polished floor, acutely aware of how exposed he was. No armor, no insignia, no visible authority beyond the fact that he had been allowed to enter without challenge. She stood at the center dais, and this time she was seated. The throne was not ornate. It was severe, dark alloy shaped into clean, angular lines, elevated just enough to remind everyone of hierarchy. She rose as he approached, the motion fluid, controlled. The chamber bowed as one. Elias did not. The ripple of shock was immediate. A commander inhaled sharply. A noble shifted in visible offense. Elias felt it, the collective intake of outrage, and resisted the instinct to apologize. Her eyes found him, held him. Then slowly she descended from the dais. Every step was deliberate. When she reached him, she turned, placing herself beside him rather than above. The effect was instantaneous, disorienting. "Today," she said, voice carrying effortlessly, "I clarify a misconception." Her gaze swept the chamber. "This human is not a guest." A murmur surged, then died under the weight of her presence. "He is not a prisoner, not an asset, not an anomaly to be managed." She paused. "He is here because I require him." Elias felt the words land like a physical force. "His counsel has altered outcomes," she continued. "Lives have been preserved. Stability has increased. Resistance has diminished." A noble stepped forward, unable to contain himself. "By undermining protocol." She did not look at him. "By revealing its limitations," she corrected. She turned her head slightly, just enough to acknowledge Elias. "You will stand," she said quietly, "and you will speak." The chamber froze. Elias' pulse thundered in his ears. "About what?" "The cost," she said. "Tell them." He took a breath. "When control is absolute," Elias began, voice steady despite everything, "it works until it doesn't. Systems fail not because people disobey, but because they stop thinking." He scanned the faces before him. Fear, curiosity, resistance. "I didn't save lives because I broke rules," he continued. "I saved them because I understood what those rules were trying to protect and chose the purpose over the structure." A commander scoffed. "Human idealism." Elias met his gaze. "Human experience." Silence fell. She stepped forward again. "This," she said, "is why he stands beside me." Her eyes sharpened. "Because loyalty without conscience is obedience. And conscience without power," she added, glancing briefly at Elias, "is ineffectual." She turned fully to him then. "You asked me for clarity," she said softly. "Here it is." She faced the assembly once more. "My name," she announced, "is Aurelian Kale Thurin, sovereign executor of this dominion." The title reverberated through the chamber. "And this," she said, placing a hand, not possessive but unmistakably present, at Elias' shoulder, "is Elias Ward." Her fingers were warm through the fabric. "He speaks with my authority," she declared. "He advises at my discretion, and his presence here is not temporary." A tremor passed through the assembly. "You may disagree," Aurelian continued calmly. "You may resent it. You may attempt to undermine it." Her gaze hardened to something lethal. "But you will adapt." She withdrew her hand and stepped back. "The assembly is concluded." No one moved. She turned to Elias, voice lowered. "Are you steady?" He nodded, breath finally returning. "I think so." Her eyes lingered on his face, searching not for weakness but for resolve. Good, she said, because after today, she glanced back at the stunned chamber. There is no version of this where you fade into the background. As they walked out together, Elias felt the full weight of what had just happened settle over him. He had crossed a threshold, not chosen, not crowned, but acknowledged. And behind him the system began to shift, not violently, not all at once, but inevitably, like a structure forced to accommodate a truth it could no longer ignore. Visibility changed everything. After the assembly, Elias stopped being ignored. He also stopped being left alone. Every corridor carried eyes now, measuring, speculating, recalculating. Conversations paused when he passed. Some faces held curiosity, others resentment thinly veiled as politeness. A few carried something closer to respect, though it was tentative, untested. Power had acknowledged him, and power never did so without cost. Aurelian did not summon him that evening. That absence was louder than any command. Elias retreated to the outer observation ring of the citadel, a quiet structure suspended beyond the main spires, where the city unfolded beneath layers of atmospheric glow. He stood at the railing, hands braced against cool alloy, letting the scale of it settle in. He had chosen this. He reminded himself of that as the weight pressed down. Footsteps approached unannounced, unguarded. He didn't turn. I wondered how long it would take you to find this place, Aurelian said quietly. Elias exhaled. I needed somewhere the walls weren't listening. She joined him at the railing, close but not touching. The city lights reflected in her eyes, softening their sharpness without diminishing their depth. You stood beside me today, she said, without hesitation. You warned me what it would mean, Elias replied. I believed you. A pause. Do you regret it? She asked. He considered the question carefully. I regret how exposed it feels, he said at last, not the choice. Her gaze remained forward. Exposure is the price of influence, she said. I have lived with it since I was trained to rule. He glanced at her. That doesn't make it easier. No, she agreed, it does not. Silence stretched, comfortable now, earned. I did not plan to bring anyone this close, she said quietly. Especially not someone who could see the cost of my decisions without flinching. Elias leaned back against the railing. You could have chosen someone easier, someone who already spoke your language. Yes, she said, and they would have told me what I wanted to hear. She turned to face him then, posture less formal, the weight of sovereignty briefly set aside. When I was younger, she said, I believed authority would quiet the loneliness. That command would replace connection. Her jaw tightened slightly. It does not. The admission hung between them, raw and unguarded. Elias didn't fill the silence. He simply stayed. That is why you are dangerous, she continued softly. Not because you challenge me, but because you remain. He met her eyes. You don't have to be alone in this. Her gaze searched his, not assessing now, but something closer to uncertainty. Do you know what it means, she asked, to allow someone to see you beyond the role? It means they can leave, Elias said, or stay. Yes, she said, and either choice has consequences. She took a slow breath. I am not accustomed to being chosen, she admitted. I am accustomed to being obeyed. The distinction mattered. I'm not here because you command it, Elias said quietly. I'm here because I decided to be. Something in her expression shifted, relief perhaps, or recognition. She nodded once. Then understand this, she said. If you remain, you will see the parts of me I do not show my court, the doubts, the fractures. I already see them, Elias replied gently. You just don't hide them from me. Her lips curved, not into a smile, but something close. She stepped closer this time, close enough that the space between them felt deliberate. This, she said, is not a claim. I know, Elias said, and not a promise, she added. I know that too. She studied him for a long moment, then reached out, not to touch him, but to rest her hand on the railing beside his. Then stay, she said simply, for now. He nodded. For now, he agreed. They stood together in the quiet above the city, two figures silhouetted against a vast dominion neither fully controlled. And for the first time since he arrived, Elias understood something essential. Power was not what made her formidable. It was the fact that she allowed herself, rarely, carefully, to be seen. And that choice bound them more tightly than any decree ever could. The warning came as data, not sound. Aurelian felt it before the alarms activated, an irregularity in the Dominion's inner security lattice, subtle enough to evade automated threat protocols, precise enough to suggest intent. Not an external assault, an internal fracture. She was already standing when the chamber lights shifted. "Seal the inner ring," she ordered calmly. "Do not announce." Her command staff hesitated. "Now," she repeated. The hesitation vanished. Across the citadel, doors locked, corridors rerouted, security layers folded inward like armor plates sliding into place. To the untrained eye, nothing changed. To those who understood power, the message was clear. Something had gone wrong. Elias felt it moments later when two guards appeared at his quarters. Not rigid this time, not ceremonial. Urgent. "Advisor Ward," one said, "you are to accompany us." He didn't ask why. They moved fast through routes he hadn't been shown before, deeper into the structure, past spaces that felt less like governance and more like contingency. Elias recognized the signs. This was where systems prepared to survive their own collapse. They entered the strategic sanctum. Aurelian stood at the center, projections flaring around her, internal communications, faction alignments, power flow anomalies. She looked up when he entered. "You are compromised," she said without preamble. Elias blinked. "I beg your pardon." "You," she clarified, "have become the fulcrum." She gestured. The projections shifted, covert communications between senior officials, coded references to the human variable, probability trees branching toward a single conclusion. "They cannot remove me," she said. "Not openly, not without destabilizing the Dominion." Her eyes hardened. "But you," she continued, "you are removable." The word landed with surgical precision. "They believe that if you vanish," she said, "the disruption collapses. The system returns to equilibrium." Elias processed that quickly. "Assassination." "Political erasure," she replied. "Public disgrace transfer." An accident made to look procedural. A familiar cold settled in his chest, the same calm he'd felt during evacuations when everything was already burning. "And what's the countermeasure?" he asked. She studied him. "That," she said quietly, "depends on you." The room seemed to hold its breath. "I can consolidate authority," she continued. "Declare you essential, bind your position to my own more formally." Elias met her gaze. "That escalates." "Yes," she said. "It would turn dissent into open opposition." "And the other option?" he asked, her jaw tightened. "You leave," she said. "Temporarily, voluntarily, you become proof that I am not dependent on you." The words cost her something. He could see it. Silence stretched. "If I go," Elias said slowly, "they win." "They survive," she corrected. "Which is what systems prioritize." He took a step closer. "And what do you prioritize?" Her eyes flickered just for a moment. "Continuity," she said, "not us, not you, continuity." Elias nodded. "Then here's my answer," he said. She turned fully toward him. "I won't let myself be used as a pressure valve," he continued. "If I leave quietly, they learn that resistance works. They will wait, adapt, and try again." Her gaze sharpened. "And if you stay?" she asked. "Then they're forced into the open," Elias said. "They expose themselves, you get clarity." "That clarity may come at the cost of your safety," she warned. "I know," he replied. "I've lived with that cost before." She searched his face, not for fear but for certainty. "You are choosing risk," she said. "I'm choosing responsibility," Elias answered. "Same as always." Aurelian turned away, pacing once, then stopping. "You understand," she said quietly, "that if I protect you openly now, I declare that you matter more to me than my court's comfort." He didn't respond. He didn't need to. She faced him again. "And you understand," she continued, "that once I do this, there will be no retreat without fracture." Elias met her eyes. "Then don't retreat." For a long moment she said nothing. Then she nodded. "So be it," she said. She straightened, command settling over her like a mantle. "Summon the inner council," she ordered. Immediately. The staff moved at once. As the chamber began to fill with motion and light, Elias felt the weight of what he'd just committed to settle over him. Not fear, not regret. Resolve. Aurelian stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You could have chosen safety," she said. "So could you," Elias replied. Her eyes held his. "I am glad you did not," she said quietly. The chamber doors opened. The confrontation was about to begin. And for the first time since arriving, Elias understood that this wasn't merely about reform or counsel anymore. It was about whether power could choose integrity and survive the choice. The inner council assembled in less than 7 minutes. That alone told Elias everything he needed to know. Fear was faster than loyalty. They stood in a semicircle before Aurelian, commanders, governors, strategists, faces composed, eyes sharp, minds already calculating damage control. Elias stood where he had been instructed to stand, not behind her, not in front of her, beside. "You summoned us under emergency authority," one of the senior governors began carefully. "We assume there is." "There is," Aurelian interrupted. Her voice was calm, precise. "A question of alignment." The word landed heavily. She gestured once. Security fields activated, sealing the chamber. No recordings, no external observers. "This human," she continued, placing no emphasis on the word, "has become a point of contention." A murmur rippled through the council. "He has exceeded his mandate," a commander said. "His influence has improved outcomes," Aurelian cut in, "measurably." "Silence but influence," another added, "must be bounded." "Yes," Aurelian agreed, "it must." Her gaze moved across them, unblinking. "And that is why I am clarifying something you appear to misunderstand." She turned finally to Elias. "Step forward." He did. The air felt charged now, not with threat but inevitability. "You came here believing," Aurelian said, addressing the council, "that removing him would restore equilibrium." Several expressions shifted, subtle, telling. "You believed," she continued, "that I would choose continuity over disruption." She paused. "You were correct." Elias felt the moment stretch, just long enough for doubt to flicker. Then she continued, "But you were wrong about what continuity requires." She faced them fully. "A system that cannot tolerate conscience is not stable," she said. "It is brittle. It survives only until reality applies pressure." Her eyes hardened. This human applied pressure. A commander stepped forward. "Then bind him. Formalize his role. Place constraints." "No," Aurelian said. The word was final. "I will not bind him," she continued, "nor will I remove him." The council stilled. "I will do something far more dangerous." She turned to Elias. "You are free to leave," she said clearly. "At any time, without sanction, without penalty." A sharp intake of breath rippled through the chamber. "He remains here," she added, "because he chooses to." Her gaze swept the council. "And because I choose to allow that choice." The implications hit like a shockwave. "You relinquish control," one governor whispered. "No," Aurelian corrected. "I redefine it." She turned back to Elias, voice lowering. "You asked me once," she said, "what I prioritize." He met her gaze. "This," she said quietly, "the ability to stand beside someone who is not compelled to stay." Silence filled the chamber, thick, unsettled. Aurelian straightened. "The matter is settled," she said. "Any action taken against him will be treated as action taken against my authority." Her eyes sharpened. "And against the future of this dominion." The council bowed, some reluctantly, some with genuine acknowledgement. The session ended. Later, much later, the citadel was quiet again. Elias stood once more at the observation ring. The city spread beneath him in luminous layers. He felt lighter, not safe, but clear. Footsteps approached. Aurelian joined him, her posture less rigid now, the weight of command momentarily eased. "You gave them uncertainty," Elias said softly. "Yes," she replied. "They dislike it." He smiled faintly. "Good." She glanced at him. "You could still leave." "I know." "And yet," she said, "you remain." He leaned against the railing. "For now." Her lips curved slightly. For now, she echoed. They stood in silence, not touching, not needing to. Do you know, she said after a moment, what frightens my court most? He shook his head. That I am changing, she said, and that I am not doing so alone. Elias looked at her. You're not losing power. No, she agreed. I am learning how to share its direction. A pause. This will not be easy, she added. There will be resistance, setbacks, moments when staying costs more than leaving. I'm familiar with that, Elias said. She met his gaze. Then stay, she said, not as a command, not as a claim, as an invitation. He nodded once. I will. The city lights shimmered below them, alive, adaptive, unfinished. Neither of them knew what the future would demand. Only that whatever came next would not be built on obedience alone, but on choice. And that, Elias realized, was the most dangerous variable of all.
Une chance, je l'ai pas eu. De toute façon, j'aurais dit de pas l'acheter.
Ben, honnêtement, ça m'aurait étonné que tu l'aies.
Ouais.
C'est cher, vraiment, il te faut.
J'aurais pu tricher. Hein. 190 $. Hey, vous alliez m'obliger à faire ça?
Drop the subs.
Je vous ai dit de dropper les subs. On fait un IRL devant.
Je te jure.
Le grand écran. Go Abs Go. C'est fucking crazy. Yo, pourquoi par contre il y a Jésus devant moi? Là? Il faudrait que je prenne un hôtel. Les dudes, ils veulent me mettre à la rue, genre. Bon, fait que de quoi à boire, gang?
Ouais, on y est presque. Il n'y avait pas un Jungle Juice ici?
Juice, Jungle Juice.
Jungle
Go Abs
Juice.
Go ce soir. It's go Abs Go, les gars. Moi, je vais pas l'écouter, en tout cas.
Ouais, il y en a un peu plus loin.
Il y a Unique qui dit salut.
Qui?
Unique Blue Eyes.
Hi, hello Blue Eyes, comment ça va?
Je l'avais vu tantôt, mais là, j'étais assise sur le... Ah, il y a du soleil, ça fait du bien.
Ah,
c'est vrai que Jersey, Team Canada Hockey, était 2-15, tabarnak.
Ouais.
Lexa a l'air mini à côté de Yas. Oui, quand même.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you know.
Mais je t'aime quand même.
Yeah, you should.
On discrimine pas ici.
Voilà.
On est gentils.
Wesh, les gens, yo, Normus, comment tu vas? Les guys, on est-tu capable au moins de se rendre à 100 subs?
Au moins.
En
Yo,
vrai?
il en reste quoi, genre 20?
Quelqu'un point d'exclamation sub dans le chat, on est à combien de subs? Vous allez voir le match à la patinoire. Guys, il est écrit sur l'écran, il est écrit dans le titre, il est épinglé. Il y en a, je pense, des fois, sont de même, ils regardent le stream.
Je pense en plus.
Ils écoutent avec les émotions, genre.
Mais.
Sub sans S, je pense. Il va falloir que Lexa pratique son height maxing. Ouais. En plus, j'ai déjà une bonne petite semaine avec ça, là. Puis en plus, ça va vite, là.
Qui c'est moi?
Oui. Elle a des grandes jambes.
J'ai des grandes
Motive les
jambes.
subs. Ben, c'est ça que je fais, mais je veux pas vous harceler, les gars.
On dirait une petite musique.
Ah, lui, c'est ça, c'est un buffalo sable. Tu te calmes! Sub avec 100 S, les gars. 100 A. Aïe, le soleil. Puis ça sent la beurre puis le pet. Wow, Montréal.
C'est trop bien, Montréal.
Ça sent le weed.
C'est
Ça sent
trop
la
bien,
quiche.
Montréal.
Puis il y a du soleil.